today talking to Rick Havrilla, who I've gotten to know for a number of years, having the opportunity to coach with you at Chaney for a couple of years, I think 2 years.
2 years.
When you had just come out of YSU and 1993 graduate of Chaney High School, and we've talked about you in a couple podcasts, and we just thought that it would be great to kind of sit down and have a conversation. So maybe just start off with like what you're doing now. Maybe talk about some of the things that you've been into, I know with family, or just kind of give us a little background there.
Yeah, so started 25th year of teaching sixth grade at Niles. Started in Youngstown. When I got out at YSU, I came back. I was teaching at Hillman Middle School, which was fun. But I was coaching at Chaney. Coach Pope went back and coached with Coach Pope and Matt Giambattista for 2 years. Took another teaching position, and been out in Niles ever since. Coached there for about 10 years until my kids started playing, and kind of coached them all the way up through. And probably the last 5 years I went back to high school, and I've been coaching at Canfield for the last 5 years. And who knows how much longer.
Yeah. When you were at Hillman and you went to Niles, what year was that? That'd have been like...
It would have been like 2000.
Okay. Yeah. And then family, how many kids do you have?
3 kids. My oldest is a senior at Tiffin University, finishing up playing baseball there. My middle one is a senior in high school this year, and my daughter just started. She's a freshman in high school.
All at Canfield? All
at Canfield, yes.
Okay. So, just to kind of start off, a couple things we've been talking about was we circled back to that 1991 playoff team. You were part of that, the first playoff team, 1992, the first playoff win. And were you playing football all the way up coming through, or were you playing athletics, or what was kind of your progression into, Chaney High School?
God, obviously, growing up, my father was a graduate of Chaney, and obviously as a kid that was a big deal to go. Couldn't wait for that Friday, that opener against Fitch. We went to a lot of games, watched a lot of progression. I had an older brother that was 4 grades ahead of me. So we weren't in high school together, but obviously when Coach Berdis took the job, he was able to play for Coach 2 years. Would have been the 87, 88 team. He graduated in 89. So a lot of your talks about that team and building that groundwork, obviously I saw it, and obviously was, saw a lot of those games that I still talk about the game in Steubenville in 88. And that team was a state championship team. And, those kids played their tails off. And that game, truthfully, should have been won. And I'll still never forget the holding call that wasn't called on that final drive that they went down to kick the game-winning field goal. But, I was around Chaney football a lot. Always wanted to be a part of it. Didn't see a ton of success, as a kid. There was a lot of tough years in there, obviously. But you can see things like our younger groups, playing with the West Side Patriots and at Volney Rogers. Things started to change. You started to see a little bit of, hey, this team could be pretty good down the road. Funny story, though, is I almost did not play football in high school. Obviously, I loved baseball, loved basketball. When I was coming up, the word on the street was, the Berdis guy doesn't like baseball. and this is a true story. And so I was playing up to 7th grade, and that would have been probably around the 88, 87 time. And I'm not going to play, because I didn't want to give up one of those other sports. And I'll never forget, I was up watching my buddies play, who was playing 8th grade at Volney, and they would play their home games at Chaney. And I was standing there watching the game, and Coach Berdis came up to me and, kind of say, hey, can we talk? And I don't even know if he remembers this. It changed everything. And he said, I don't know what you've heard or, about not being able to play other sports. All he told me was, listen, you can have your baseball, you can have your basketball. Just give your time when it's needed to football, and we'll have no issues. Mm-hmm. And next year I was back playing in 9th grade, and that was it. It's one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I always say I've played all 3 sports and played at the next level, and there's still nothing like, and obviously the success we had played a big role into that, but a Friday night Chaney football game was it for me. That was life.
It probably didn't help that your brother Andy came to me as a quarterback and ended up as an offensive lineman. Certainly was good for us that it worked out.
Doe was telling me that story actually before you came, about how he was yelling at his lineman one day, and he's like, I could go get a quarterback to do better than you guys, and he did, and it was your brother.
He ended up being a starter too. He was made to play the line. Trust me, he was definitely not a quarterback.
So you had visions of pulling guard in your future.
Yeah, he was built a little different.
I remember, and that was one of the questions I wanted to kind of ask you, because you were very successful as a baseball player, basketball, football. What did you see yourself as? What sport was your primary sport? And then, oh, by the way, I'm just a, player playing this sport. What was your focus?
We talk about this a lot in today's day compared to, back then. Mm-hmm. Because when it was baseball season, that's all I wanted to do, mm-hmm. And obviously Coach Berdis, really helped the cause when we did all our football workouts in the summer in the morning. Mm-hmm. So, gave us baseball guys the opportunity to go play our games at night and do what we needed to do. And, but when it was time for football, I felt like I was all like, I loved football season. And then it was like when it was basketball season, I was all in on basketball. That's how everything was seasonal. It seemed like, obviously, except weightlifting. Coach still used to tease me in high school, like, "Do you know where the weight room's at?"
Well, now understand that the guy that was accused of not liking baseball or baseball players hired as his defensive coordinator the baseball coach, okay, and maybe there was some strategy in that, but understand this: we specifically, when I played at Chaney, workouts were always in the evening, and we specifically changed all that to go in the mornings to accommodate the baseball guys.
So, me personally, Rick and that group of guys, like Rick, Tom Mager, and this age may be a little bit off, but Santangelo,
Mike Billy.
Yep. I was playing baseball at Arco when you guys were your shadows of legendary status. That group of guys was the guys that I kind of looked up to. Yeah. And so, that was one of the things that I wondered, because I know as a baseball player there was always a conflict at Ursuline for me going. I had to make a choice because we went in the evening, and I either couldn't go to one or the other. In season I'm going to, mm-hmm. Okay. But I know you guys had a great run. I want to say when you were 15 on that Babe Ruth team, mm-hmm. Went to World Series or something.
Yeah, World Series.
how did and I think I asked Ron, like, how do you manage that conflict, because you have guys that are playing, and they're probably playing into doubles at that point in time.
That summer was tough.
I had my dates mixed up on this, and Rick corrected me, and I'll defer to him as far as explaining that.
So that was my sophomore year.
Okay.
That would have been 1990. That was the run we made. And obviously it was one of those, like, nobody ever thought, yeah, it was great. Okay, we had won, like, a district. Then we won the state. Then we went to Wisconsin, won a regional. Next thing you know, we're in New Orleans playing for a World Series. And obviously it was set up differently. Now, at that time, really the people, and I know we were in and out, and it did move in the doubles, because the way that tournament, and they don't do it anymore like that. Baseball it's almost like done now by July 1st, a lot of the summer stuff, because of football. But back then, I think we would open usually that Labor Day weekend, though.
Yeah.
So that was usually the Fitch game. So that kind of ran. And matter of fact, we were gone for the opener. And really, it did. I was a sophomore, and, I know Matt Vasco had rolled into that role. It really didn't affect me as much, but like Mike Billy, who was a junior that year, because he was a grade ahead, even though we were the same age. Yeah. We had talked about that. And Mager, like guys that probably were going to contribute a little more on that team. Mike Billy was probably the one, because I think he was slated as an outside linebacker, as a starter coming into that. And we missed game one. We were gone for game one and kind of didn't get back till the Camel game in week 2. And then you had to get acclimated. Yeah. So it was a tough year. I mean, it was interesting. I mean, obviously it was a great run. It was fun and it worked out. But, obviously I know it was probably frustrating from a coaching staff standpoint, when you got guys in and out for a month long. It's hard to, like, put your personnel in place.
But, and I'm sure Pope was very instrumental in this. I mean, we decided as a staff that, we were going to commit to that, disruption, if you will, and their opportunity was a once in a lifetime type deal, and we didn't want to deprive them of that.
So did you always go in the evening, or at what point did you decide to start going in?
No, I'm talking about conditioning.
No, I got
baseball in general.
Yeah,
in the conditioning part of that, and the preseason prep and that.
Yeah, because some of those tournaments, like the one in Louisiana, it was 10 days. We were gone for 10 days. Yeah. So, like,
it's funny. We, I'm sure I mean, this year football started August 19th.
Yeah, I said it keeps.
It's like it just keeps getting earlier and earlier.
That's like when I was in high school. That's when doubles started,
right?
Like right around the 15th of August.
So you didn't hold these guys to 3 absences and you're off the team?
No. And it's funny that you say that, because we were combating when the transition occurred. Especially those first 3 years, we were combating kids not only going down, but kids that would try to test and miss practice or whatever. And so we were really stamping down on that. And when this came along, it was like right in the middle of all that. And, I mean, the rules were the rules, but we had to make accommodation for that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that's, it's one thing kids just not showing up because my grandma's in town, as opposed to, I got 8 guys from my team going to Louisiana playing this tournament. That's So, one thing I wanted to touch on was, when you go into Chaney, like, I know you played baseball and basketball. Were you playing varsity at those times? Were you JV, or how did that go? Freshman, sophomore years.
So my freshman year, we had, obviously, football season was, we had a freshman team. We were very thin. I want to say we didn't have, but we couldn't have had 15 guys It really was I mean, I still have the team picture. I mean, I never forget going to play Fitch our freshman year, and 50 guys come rolling out, and that was a good group, and that was a group we ended up playing against down the road with the English brothers and things of that nature. So after football, basketball, my freshman year, I ended up being like a six-man on the varsity team. Baseball that year, I ended up starting as a freshman.
And was Mullally basketball coach at that time?
He was the basketball coach, and Coach Pope, that was his first year. He just took the program over. My freshman year was Coach Pope's first year.
Do you guys know who was the baseball coach before that? I know Mullally.
Mullally.
Okay. So he was doing both?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So Pope took over first. And who were some of the guys that you kind of come in to high school with?
That would have been Tom Mager, Sylvester Patton, Kevin Orfino, Mark Heron, Ron Allen, Kenya Meadows. That was our, like the core of the 93 group coming in. God, there's so many. I mean, we had a big senior class that year when we graduated.
One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting when we talked to some of those guys from 92 was that freshman year, a lot of those guys coming from other schools weren't able to play.
Yeah, and I watched that one, and Sylvester talking about that because he was at Volney with us.
Yeah.
He had done that year of sitting out his 8th grade year, so he was able to play on our freshman team.
Yeah.
But all those other guys weren't. So that was a little different. Like that's why we didn't have the numbers really that first year. And then they were all eligible to play after. That was the racial balance transfers, which became a big deal at that time.
Who were the freshman coaches then?
I had Bruce Palmer.
Okay.
And I want to... Who was with him?
And the Samarons?
No, they were doing JV. Gessler. Might have been Jeff?
Jeff? Yeah, because he started as the varsity and then went down. His choice went down to.
I want to say it was Jeff.
Yeah, because Bobby was at Volney.
Yeah, because I know at JV, that's when Chuck Samaron and Mikovich, they would coach a lot of our JV games.
Yeah.
They started off with toss pass first play.
We ran 5 wide and shotgun. We still laugh about that.
Oh my gosh. And so Ron, like, what are you thinking? Like, you're as a head coach, man, you're always in the thick of it, like right in the moment. You're dealing with what's 6 inches in front of your face, but then you also feel like, I think I got some guys coming. There's some troops coming over the hill. How do you weather that storm? Know you have a youth movement coming, but also not feel like you're sacrificing some of the guys who've been in your program for 4 years. How do you manage all that?
Well, to be honest with you, what was utmost on my mind with all that at that time, I can recall, is I had lost a kid to basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, came to my house. I was living in Christine Lane. It came to my house with his equipment during doubles and said, great kid. I mean, tremendously successful, and just backed off, and so then you start to worry. Okay, not to the point of, hey, listen, I'm a little bit leery about any of you guys playing basketball or baseball, but it happened. I mean, I had great expectations for the kid, and he wanted to concentrate on the other two. That's. But like I said, bringing Pope on, and he became a great advocate, at least for baseball. I mean, you know, and I always knew that when I didn't have them and Pope did, they were in good hands. You know.
Yeah,
Yes.
because he ran a lot of our baseball, and obviously, I always laugh about this. I said I've never had baseball practices like I had in high school, even in college, because Pope was. I mean, he was so regimented in his ways. It was a lot like going out for a football practice. You know, it was like having a script ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, baseball was the same way. You know, and his off season, I know I was in basketball, but I know the guys that were with him when baseball actually got going, like in February, the first official date, they were hammering it, you know, and I know they were lifting hard and they were doing what they were supposed to do. So those football guys were still kind of getting there. And a lot had to do with, obviously, Pope being the head coach.
Sure, and I think, you know, for a long time, up until the relatively recent future, you know, the old adage was baseball players really can't lift because you'll get tight and then you'll, you know, and I think that's probably that transition time of when that was starting to change a little bit. Now you see just monsters.
Oh, these guys are big.
Yeah, you know, just, I mean, unbelievable. And then so, like, when you were, did you, your freshman or sophomore year, did you make All City in baseball or basketball?
Baseball.
Okay.
Yeah. Sophomore in basketball.
Okay. And then I would assume junior, senior in football.
Senior year.
Senior year.
I don't think I did my junior year.
You didn't make it as who would have been the quarterback? Also.
Maybe I did.
That was you.
I honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah. That's a pretty good run.
That would have been 91.
91 season.
Yeah.
91 season.
Darnell Bracey, maybe?
Yeah, could have been.
Yeah, that's a name. He went to YSU and played, and
Yeah, it could have
East.
could have been.
yeah.
You, I'm going to guess that you had to at least be second team.
Maybe.
Hey, Braden, why don't you look that up? 91, All City.
Booker Newberry.
Booker
New from
From
South.
South. Yeah,
Talk about a shot putter throw at quarterback.
yeah.
They would just run keep.
He
well,
he was big.
91.
Yeah, he was. Who was that guy?
All
that
City players.
YSU played against that was big like that.
McNair.
McNair, Alcorn State.
Yeah, I think so.
Steve McNair.
There was just a clip of Jim Campbell. You remember Jim Campbell?
Jimmy Campbell. I see him all the time.
Do you?
Jim
Played
Campbell,
quarterback
the
at-
sports announcer.
Yeah, the announcer.
Oh, I thought you
Yeah,
were talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
the one that played quarterback at Mooney.
No.
Yeah, no, he's still doing.
Is he alive? I mean,
Jim Campbell.
Yeah, I'm not being.
He's not with KBN anymore, but he's with. I just heard it the other day. NIO maybe,
Like-
WNIO doing football.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm almost positive.
Ron, you didn't get Rick on
All I did was hand the ball off.
All City. First playoff team.
He was the starting quarterback.
We didn't put it in the air too much that year. We didn't have to. We were really good up front.
It takes a lot of work to run 34, 35, man. Thank you.
That group in front of us was really that class was like that's when you kind of knew when they were freshmen. I was in 8th grade. That freshman group they were really good. They were like pounding teams that year.
Which would have been.
That was Mike Billy and Terleski,
Yeah,
Chris
Terleski.
Frank,
Oh, I remember talking to them in the lobby.
Highland,
Yeah.
Wallaco, Richie
they were
Sylvester, Jason Benson. I mean, that group was probably, and that was the thing going into my senior year is we had to replace so much talent, like especially defensively. We were really good my junior year defensively. Like
Yeah.
that defense
we
was
were.
really good.
Yeah, and it seems like just at that point, you know, that 90 to 91 to 92, 93, that's where the program kind of is kicking in, because you are replacing guys. Like, you get some juniors stepping up, seniors leaving, and you're, the old cliche, I would just reload, not necessarily rebuilding. But that's where it all kind of seems to start clicking, is in that era, that you're talking about.
It really did piece. It pieced from 87, and like we've talked about, every year got better. Even though we were 1-9 in '89,
right, 100%.
we were playing a lot better football.
Yeah.
And the kids were progressing, and 90 was a really pivotal year. I mean, just to taste that winning success, to have those wins, more wins than, or what was 5-5?
Yeah, 5-5.
Just to have a winning season and be city champions, that was a big deal. And the kids that were maybe wondering turned into believers, and that just kind of caught fire.
Yeah, and I think that's the toughest thing as a coach is you preach this, right? You preach it, and you stick to it, and you stick to it almost to the point of what's perceived as cutting your own legs off. And at some point, you got to get paid for all that. Where, okay, 2-8, 1-9, 2-8, shoot, 1-9 again. At some point, there's got to be a payoff to the kids. Like, now and then you.
Well, you talk, and I heard you guys talk a lot about, you have to learn to win.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get to that point?
Yeah.
And really, from the outside, you talk about the 87, 88, that 88 year, it was like one of those years that the schedule was brutal. They played a brutal schedule. And it was like, oh, we almost won. Mm-hmm. We almost won. We almost beat a really good Steubenville team. But then you saw something like South was really good that year. They had Morrow at quarterback. They had Tamron Smith. And I'll never forget going down the South, playing them at their place, and played a great game. 2 long Del Baccio runs and end up upsetting them. Mm-hmm. So then you're like, we're not that bad. We're pretty good. We, learning how to win. And I think then you saw it the next year, as you started to grind it out, then winning a city championship. We were always like, we want to win that city title. That was a big deal. Like, teams were really good in the city. I mean, there was a lot of great athletes. It's funny even talking to my kids about it. They don't realize there were 5 high schools. Mm-hmm. And big high schools. We were either D1, D2. It wasn't small schools. And then when that kind of progression, and then we started like that year, and obviously the Fitch win to my junior year to start the season off with that was the pivotal. And I've heard Coach talk about it a lot, about getting over that hump. And then when you learn to win a game like that, it just triggers you mentally completely different. Like, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
We can do some damage. You start believing in yourselves, and you start hearing that Chaney, a bunch of tough-nosed kids, they'll play you hard. Now it's like, we got to play Chaney. Yeah. They can beat you.
Yeah. And everything that you just said, everything that you just went over, the kids trying to figure it out and then figuring it out. Coaches were going through the same transition. The staff was trying to figure out how to win, how to put the kids in the best position to be successful. And I'm not talking about strategy or anything. I'm talking about fit. I'm talking about getting the right fit. And a lot of it, and certainly in those first 3 years, was trial and error. And then as the kids started to get more confidence, the coaches, I think, started to get more confidence. And, that all kind of tied in.
Going into that game, like, were you guys talking about that? Were you talking about, the players? I mean, locker room. Were you guys feeling like, hey, we're gonna went from 1-9 to 5-5? What are we gonna do? What was that kind of feeling?
We kind of knew we had a pretty good team that year. Obviously, there were some guys, and I was one of them. I mean, the quarterback position was going to be somebody new, and I know me and Ron Allen were both working there. And I thought the scrimmages that we played, I remember scrimmaging Wadsworth, and they were usually a pretty good big D1 school, and we had a couple pretty good scrimmages, and we knew what Fitch had. I mean, obviously that group, their big core group was still in our class. They were juniors, but their senior class was okay, but their core was in their junior class, and we knew they were going to be pretty good. And I remember watching them scrimmage, but we knew we had a shot to go win that game. And I think it was that mentality, like the excitement of, and obviously that game was a pretty crazy game. Came down to the end.
Right at the end.
Right at the end, but
that's the one where. Is that the swing pass or is that the punt return?
No, that was swing pass.
Okay.
Sylvester took it up the sideline. The Tim Needham block.
The block.
The block.
Yeah.
But I think, that just winning that game, like even going into the next week, which you were going to play, who eventually ended up being they're winning their conference title, was Camel. Mm-hmm. And they were pretty good. They still to this day, I say that was one of the most athletic teams, and they hitched. I mean, they played physical. And if I'm not mistaken, it was like a 9-0 game. And our defense played fantastic and they had a really good running back in Carlin Adams and really good quarterback. And, I think it just started building confidence. It was more of a confidence thing, knowing that you started to build the expectation of like expecting to win.
Yeah.
And then instead of hoping to win.
Yeah. And I just want to touch on Camel there for a minute. Like, I think that's a program now that people really, unless you're from there, sleep on and forget about how good and tough and talented they were. And I think as time, population goes down, maybe there's not the success that there was, but you look back at the 70s, 80s, 90s, I mean, they were unbelievable. Even their baseball and basketball teams.
Yeah.
Just completely program-wise.
Well, even the year before that, my sophomore year, that was my first game back because I missed the Fitch game. Oh, they were running wild. I mean, they were good.
Yeah.
I mean, they had backs after back after. I mean, you go from, they had Patton, they had Damon Drayton, they had Dylan McCullough.
Yeah.
Toby
Walker. I mean, they were loaded.
And then so, like, I guess kind of fast forward to that first playoff game, you had the opportunity to see a lot of all that, right? From from your brother as a fan, and then coming up through some of the lack of success, the building of the program and laying the foundation, and then, boom, you get into playoffs. What was that experience like?
Oh, wow. I mean, and that's where we go back when you talk about the community in general. I mean, the West Side was so behind us. Mm-hmm. Like, it just, you saw businesses on Mahoning Avenue with things in their windows, but we talk. You look at today's playoff system. Well, then they only took 4 teams, mm-hmm. And I mean, if you didn't go 10-0, 9-1, and even 9-1 wasn't guaranteeing you any, a spot, and I heard you guys talk about in the one game that, was a tough one was the Cleveland Benedictine game, going up there, because we were actually set up really well where we didn't have to play Steubenville. We're thinking we're going to play Richfield, Revere. I forget who else was in there, those 4 teams. Then that was a tough one. The Benedictine game up there was tough. And obviously, if we don't lose our second running back because of not letting him play with his cast, would have made a difference. I don't know. I still think it would have. I mean, they were like a 2-headed monster going in up to that point, and
Sylvester got rocked on a kickoff, and the discussion was that he fractured his sternum
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know. But, yeah, it was a tough loss. But a great, I mean, it wasn't, we didn't get beat by the Little Sisters of the Poor.
No,
No,
they were one of those 6-4 teams that were pretty good. Like, and their schedule was brutal too.
With a legendary coach, you know.
Well, they had a really good running back that year too.
Yeah.
The kid had a boatload of yards, and he was a big boy, tough to bring down. Like, just something different than we had seen pretty much all year.
Yeah.
Were you playing defense at the time?
Yeah. I was good for skeleton drill. That's what I was good for. Or the all hands team on an onside kick. I did take a beating my sophomore year though, on the scout team.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
Would they have you safety?
Oh yeah. I remember when I had to play Pat Humphrey
Yeah.
for Ryan and have to run the option. Mac Gilchrist hit me so hard I still hear bells in my